Hi, it's Joy Foster, founder of Tech Pixies and the host of the Sparkle and Thrive podcast. And today we have a lovely guest, Julia, who is in the nutrition slash menopause space. And the community that we have built at Tech Pixies very much is built around a community of women who are in their 40s, 50s, and 60s primarily. We have some women who are younger, some women who are older, but quite a few of those women are passing through or have passed through recently or are about to pass through this place we call menopause. And it's a big conversation that's coming out in the public domain. And so I wanted to tap into some of the people in our community who specialize in that exact space. So, Julia, welcome to Tech Pixies Sparkle and Thrive podcast. Of course, you've been a part of the Tech Pixies community for a long time, but it's great to have you on the podcast.
Oh, that's amazing, Joy. Thank you for having me on here. Yeah, I'm so excited. And I think,
Let's talk about why you wanted to learn how to use social media and what message you wanted to bring to the world.
yeah, I went through the menopause journey like most people, starting in my early 40s, and didn't know a lot about it, like a lot of people. And you struggle through it and you stumble through it and you come along different things. And then you think, what is this? Go and do the research, find out about it. And I needed to sort of preparing while you're doing that, you're thinking, oh, I'm going to retire soon, because you get into that age when you're in your 50s, late 40s, 50s. And I thought, right, okay, what's my pension doing? It won't support me, probably not now, in the lifestyle that I want to have when I retire. So I need to do something. So two things happened sort of simultaneously, really. I found Tech Pixies and I thought, oh, that's a fab way. Perhaps I was going to be a virtual assistant. Perhaps I could do some VA work. Um, and while I retire, and I can do that wherever I want around the world, if I'm traveling, I can do a bit of online stuff. So I joined Tech Pixies and thought, oh, perhaps I could do social media then as well. So that was how I found Tech Pixies and why I started with Tech Pixies. And then in my Tech Pixies journey, going through my menopause journey a little bit more, and I had a hysterectomy and went into full menopause mode. So 2 weeks later, even though I thought I'd been in the menopause for probably about 15 years and thought I was over it. I obviously wasn't, and I was somebody that would do it a little bit later, because the menopause is like the window is like nearly 20 years for the menopause. It's a huge window for women, and like say some women can do it at 30. So that window is absolutely massive. But that was a big wake-up call to me. I had lots of health issues, and then I suddenly realized I could use my Tech Pixies training to support and help other women out there going through this journey that I've been through. And I've trained as a nutrition coach. So I'm now a certified nutrition coach. And I'm going to get out there, and with all my training with Tech Pixies and all my support from you, Joy, that you do with all the mindset and life skills training, I can get out there and help other women going through this journey so they don't have to struggle on their own, because it
Well,
is,
let's talk about this 30-year window for
yeah,
menopause and the changes that start happening to you. So the reaction that people have as they go through menopause is different for everyone.
yeah,
So
yeah.
let's talk about the different sort of symptoms that might be caused by menopause. And one of the things that you've really specialized in is how to combat menopause with better nutrition. And what changes have you made to your diet to then combat the effects of menopause?
Yeah, I think because women do go through it at different times in a different way, and everybody experiences something. So it's menopause is when your body is actually changing. So everything that you knew, everything that like you know now, Joy, will change because your body changes the way it works. And there are people out there that'll exercise and are really fit, and then they go into menopause and they start putting weight on, and they just exercise more, thinking, oh, that's what I've done in the past, or I've eaten less. That's what I've done in the past. And it's worked, and it actually doesn't work anymore because your body's it's changing, so it's not constant. So it's not all of a sudden it works. It sort of goes through a process and it works differently. So when it goes through the change and it works differently, you have to do different things, and it's a surprise to everybody. So
Well,
the
that
first
was the
thing,
part that when we were talking about it privately, I didn't really understand that you could be doing, you could have a plan and a system nutritionally, exercise,
yeah,
routine wise, that's worked for you your whole life. And then
yeah,
suddenly none of it works anymore. I didn't know that was possible.
yeah, that's it. That's exactly right. So, going into menopause, it's all about your hormones, and your hormones are a major contributor to how you work and how you're made and your makeup. So once they start changing and the hormones that you have in your body are different at different levels, your body actually works differently and it needs different things. So one of the main things that affects is your metabolism. So if you go out and do even more exercise, your body's going, hang on a minute, I don't like that. I don't want this to happen. And so it'll just keep putting weight on because actually it's not working properly. So one of the things that I learned and I did for myself was change my nutrition. And by eating healthier, so basically it's just eating whole foods. And I'd always cooked loads. I thought I ate really, really well. I didn't. Little did I know. And lots of people are the same. So, just eating healthy food, healthy whole foods, but not only what you eat, it's when you eat and how you eat it. That's really important, and all sorts of other things that you do. So, light, sunshine. So, taking vitamin D, which lots of people already know, but how the light affects your body clock and your circadian rhythms, that is really important. Um, to how your mind works. And one of the big things that women get is brain fog. And lots of women, it's very, very sad. And when I found this out, I was like, I couldn't believe it happened. But lots of women go through this, and their brain fog is so bad because you forget. Luckily, I'm better than I was, or else I'd probably forget the next word I was going to say to you, Joy. Literally, and women can do that. You get in the menopause, and the brain fog makes you forget what you're saying, and you lose your train of thought, and you look like or you feel like you look like you're silly. And women all think that they're going into early dementia, and some of them leave like well-paid jobs that they've loved and they've been really good at. So instead of finding the help, or they were unable to find the help or misdiagnosed, then they end up leaving these fabulous jobs and their lifestyle changes, and it didn't need to. So
That's
luckily,
really interesting. So this brain fog. So the couple of symptoms that I've heard from people are, because I have not yet entered this phase, which,
yeah,
but I know a lot of women in our community have, which is why I really wanted to bring this to the forefront of the podcast. Um, some of the things I've heard are the hot flashes, the brain fog for sure, um, and so from the brain fog perspective, I do agree with you. It's completely tragic that they would that someone would stop a career thinking that they can't do it anymore, when actually if they get this right support that they need, they could stay in that job. And one of the things that is starting to happen, and you're going to be doing this as part of your the work you do, is that corporates are starting to recognize menopause a lot more. And tell us about the initiative that you have started to try and encourage the government to recognize menopause as an actual what is it, a characteristic? Is that what it is?
yes, yes. So it's not. I found this. So there's a lady, and it was another lady that has been on a campaign to get menopause recognised as a protected characteristic, which is amazing. And she's got a petition out there. I shared it on my social media pages, so it should be available if anybody wants to find it, and I can share it
We
again.
can link to it in the show notes. Can you
Yeah.
explain what a characteristic is and why that's important?
So a protected characteristic is something like you've got a disability. So we all know, disabled people are protected in the workplace and they've got certain rights. You could be black, Asian, different race. You could be male, female. all those. So we have like maternity leave, and now we have paternity and adoption leave, and there's all these things that people are protected and they get special dispensation in the workplace. So so they've got the same rights as everybody else, and part-time people and full-time workers all have the same rights. So this lady has been her petition has been it's been approved so that she can put a petition forward to Parliament to get menopause as one of those protected characteristics, that if you're going through menopause and you're having difficulty, your workplace has got to recognize, hang on a minute, this lady's in menopause, and she needs support, and find ways to support her in the workplace instead of just saying, oh, you can't do your job anymore, you have to leave. So it is really sad that when you think where we are in society with all our technological advances and everything, and you think of all the discrimination that is still out in the world, and I think more than half the population must be women. And why has this been allowed to happen? And I think it's amazing that now um, we're actually going to get recognised in the workplace for menopause, because I have experienced that in my workplace and other ladies that have left. Luckily, not totally because of the menopause. They've had something else that happens as well, because lots of things happen. It's not just menopause at that time, like your parents get sick and all sorts of other things happen, so they've left for other reasons as well. But it's really good that hopefully this will go through Parliament and menopause will be a protected characteristic. And I think it's really important that we all, as many people as possible, get out there and sign that petition and say, hang on a minute, this is what we need, because this is the right thing to do.
Well, one of the organizations that's really active in helping women who've had their rights, I guess, violated from a perspective of being pregnant and then screwed is the organization Pregnant and Then Screwed.
Yeah.
And they often showcase case studies where someone's been dismissed or they've been gaslighted, and then they have been able to get retribution as a result. And I think what we're seeing happening, and this goes back to this conversation around social media, is it. Sorry, I've got kids in the background playing. I'm just going to shut the door. This is a live podcast, everybody. It's all happening. The phone's ringing. The kids are loud. Give me 1 second. Let me just sort that out. And
No
those of you who are
worries.
watching live, thank you for watching live.
Oh,
what a
my
crazy
gosh.
world we live in.
Oh,
1 second. Hello, live podcasting. All right. So Catherine's going to do her magic and Colby are going to do their magic, and they're going to remove that part from the live podcast. All right. And hopefully you won't hear my children shouting in the background. They're home for half term. And of course, this is the juggle, isn't it? Having it during the half term. Anyway, what I wanted to come back to, I'm having my own brain fog moment right now. What we're talking about so I was just saying. So Pregnant Then Screwed is an organization that helps women who have lost a job or been gaslighted as a result of being pregnant. And they feature a lot of the stories that they've been able to help get settlements paid out for people who've, basically gone through that as a result of pregnancy. What's interesting about the menopause conversation is that if menopause is recognized in the way that pregnancy is recognized in that sense, then people who are losing their jobs unfairly due to this change that they're going through, hopefully there's hope there as well. But it starts with number one, the person recognizing what's happening to them and then getting the support that they need. We've got a live viewer who's watching, Stephanie. She says lots more needs to be done. Regular blood tests and education on how to deal with your individual menopause. Been tackling it for 20 years. Best defense, travel, nutrition, tennis, and weight training. I love that. But this is a really interesting point. It's this individual journey of menopause. There is not a one solution fits all situation. In fact, when we started the podcast, Christina said, it's not just menopause that requires good nutrition. Let food be your medicine and medicine your food. the thing that we have to recognize and are starting to recognize is each one of us is an individual genetic makeup of, there's a historical DNA that's there, there's an epigenetic DNA that's there, and we all react differently to the same stimuli, the same situations, et cetera, because of our body makeup. So how do you deal with menopause in an individualistic way? It's almost like, I remember as a teenager, it was, how do you deal with, everyone has different types of periods, right? Some of them are heavy, some of them are light, some of them hurt, some of them don't. Like some people don't get periods at all, So we, as women, our whole life, we've dealt with this element that men don't deal with. So how do we is there an understanding now that menopause is an individual journey for each person, and how does someone navigate that individual journey?
So there's definitely a recognition that menopause is an individual journey for each individual person. And I think this is what makes it so complex and difficult, and why when you go to your GP, it's so difficult. And you can go to one GP who isn't really focused around the menopause, and you'll probably get prescribed antidepressants if you've got brain fog. Just take that one. But if you go to the other GP that perhaps is a woman in that around that age and is more aware of menopause, you might go down the road of getting HRT or doing more investigations into have you got menopause, and get different help and get the correct help. And that's what happens at the moment. So one of the first things that needs to happen in that field is all our doctors need to get better education, and that is happening. But dealing with it individualistic, it's we're all basically the same. So you start from that point. So you start from the baseline. This is your baseline. We're all humans, and we all more or less work in the same way, whether you're male or female, really. So you start nutritionally, you start at that base. And this is what will work for the perfect role model. So, I've got the perfect person, and this is what will work for that model. Yeah. Joy, I can't hear you. You're on mute. Yeah.
So all else being equal, this is what will work.
Yes. Yes. So, and then from there,
that's your base.
You start from there, and then you tweak it. But you can start from avocados are really healthy and really good for you. And I have tried my heart out to like avocados, and I cannot. I put them in a smoothie. I mash them with all sorts of things, which actually defeats the object. So you might as well just take the avocado out. And
Gloria Wilkinson, she's another one of our tech fixies. She's a fitness guru. She cannot stand avocados, so that's like a thing. But avocados are good for that. All things being equal, avocados are a great base food.
They are. They're a fabulous food, and they're full of healthy fats, omega-3. They're amazing. But there are people out there that just don't like them. So, and that is fine, because we can swap it out with something else. And that's what you do.
What would you swap for an avocado if you're not an avocado lover?
Say if I'm not an avocado lover, if I was making a smoothie and I was going to make an avocado smoothie, I don't like avocados, I'd probably stick banana and some peanut butter in there.
There you go.
And then you'll get
also is not a fan of
avocados.
All right, so Annie, you got to replace your avocados with peanut butter and
banana. And luckily, peanut butter and banana. Well, I wouldn't have an avocado sandwich, but if you wanted peanut butter and avocado on toast, peanut butter and banana on toast, it works really well.
Avocado does not sound appealing. But peanut butter and banana does sound nice. Okay, so that's one replacement. What are other base foods that we should be? And when you say like a base food that we should all be eating, what's the frequency of that? Like if someone did like avocados, how often should they be eating them?
Probably just 3 times a week, possibly, or twice a week. If they have an avocado and they have half an avocado one day and half an avocado a couple of days later, that would be fine. But the base diet would be a whole foods, plant-based diet with some meat. So it's now recognised, and there's been lots of research, and I've just been reading a fabulous book about the connection between what you eat and your your brain and how your mind works, and mental illness. And it's still a whole foods diet, so based on whole grains, um, and cooking from scratch, really. No processed foods, because all the processed foods that you can buy in the shops are full of chemicals. And even if they've got the um, say the broccoli or the vegetables in there, they've had to do something to those vegetables to make them last, because you know it's not going to last that long. If you put the broccoli on the side or even in the fridge, it won't last as long as that broccoli's been in that package. So you know it's not good for you. So it's eating a whole foods diet that's full of whole grains like brown rice.
My husband and I did probably when the kids came along, because they didn't want the brown bread, but we switched to the multi-grain seed, the Sainsbury's multi-seed bread. We've had that for years and years and years.
Yeah,
But the kids are still, they're not quite there yet. So they have the
it's the
farm
seeds.
White House bread, and the rest of us eat but I seed sensations. That's what it's called, and I love it. And it's a little bit sweet. They've got seeds along the top, and it's quite nice, that one.
So yeah, it's not that good.
It's
It's
not
the
that
sad
good for you.
news.
Oh no.
So bread as a whole is not a fabulous food. Sourdough is the best, and if you want to have so I have sourdough rye bread, and so the rye is the best grain because it's the wheat, and it's the wheat that causes inflammation. So we have to try and stay away from wheat flour. So wholemeal and whole grain is better than white, yes. And if you're only having a small amount, that's fine. But look at the sugar on the packet of the bread. So that's what I would say. So if you're going to think, is this bread going to help be healthy? If you turn it and look at the nutrition information, and if there's more than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams of bread, not per slice, per 100 grams, you might have to work that out. I don't know if they give you that on all loaves of bread. Then you shouldn't be eating it because
Now I
they've
feel like I
loaded it
need to
with
go get my
sugar.
seed sensations
Go
and
and
bring
have
them
a
here
look.
and read it.
Yeah, go and have a look. I shop in Sainsbury's too, but they do sourdough, and they do a rye sourdough, which has got less than 5 grams
Okay,
of
so
sugar.
all right, so we can replace the bread that we've been eating with the rye sourdough. Now I know some people
Yeah,
are allergic to
your
sourdoughs,
kids
but that
might
doesn't
like.
work for them.
No, you see, you might, and people are allergic to wheat, so and they have to have gluten free. So you could swap to gluten free bread if you wanted, but still you need that whole grain in there and not white. Um, there was research done, and in the mid 1800s, the diet of the British population, the general population, was the best diet it's been for centuries, and that was just before they discovered white flour. So they were growing all their own vegetables, eating it, having a little meat, not too much because it was expensive. So they would have a little meat, um, and the bread that they had was all whole grain because that's all they made. They didn't take that out, they just made whole grain, and that was the best it had been as a general rule, for centuries. And then somebody abroad started making white flour, and then we started importing it. Yeah, and then it all went rye from there, and we've not got back to it from there.
Okay, so
Lots of issues.
I have looked up the nutritional information for
For your bread.
for the bread that we've been eating. And actually I've got to double check. I'm not 100% sure it's the complete right one, but um it says a serving contains so it's saying and the sugars, it's saying 1.7 grams.
Oh, that's quite good. But how much is the serving?
4.3 on 100 grams.
There you go. So you're okay. So
Okay,
that's okay.
so when you're looking at the
4.3.
bread packet, you're saying, okay, per 100 grams, you want that to be less than 5 grams.
Yes.
Okay,
On
so my
everything.
bread's okay.
So your bread's okay. So every single food that you're going to eat, look at the packaging. And if it's got more than 5 grams of sugar per 100 grams, because when you say serving, you've got to know, because on some of the bread, you'll say per slice. And it's like, well, how much is a slice? But they may give you, and quite a lot of them do, give you the 100-gram version, because that is the measure that's generally perceived that everybody uses. So if you search
Okay.
online, that's the
That's
one.
good to know. And actually, the farm bread we give the kids, which is the Sainsbury's in-house made one, not
Yeah.
the packaged one, that's 3.2 grams per 100 on the
So
sugars.
that's quite good on the sugar.
So that's
Yeah.
not that bad.
But
Okay,
it's
good. I feel a
yeah,
little bit better. Okay, so we talked about avocados. We've talked about replacing avocados with
yeah,
the peanut butter and the bananas.
banana.
And then, of course, Stephanie's pointed out we need to know what's going on with the bloods because she was eating all these wonderful foods and then found that her potassium levels were very high because of it. So one of the
Um,
advantages of doing the blood tests. So let's talk about HRT. A lot of people are nervous about it. I have someone who's I'm really good friends with, whose husband died of cancer. She's scared to death of doing HRT, so she's suffering massively because she doesn't want to do HRT. So let's talk about what you know about HRT. Are there and how do people go about figuring out what levels of HRT stuff they
information.
should be on?
So HRT got an absolutely bad press. So my mum had breast cancer, and my mum to this day can't believe that I'm on HRT. And we have a conversation every so often. And I have to keep finding evidence and sending it to her. So
So
HR
HRT stands for hormone
hormone
replacement therapy.
replacement therapy, yes. And it got a bad press with breast cancer quite a few years ago now, through some research that was done. But the information that went out to the press was incorrect. And if you follow Louise Newson, she's called the Menopause Doctor on social media. She's an absolutely brilliant lady, full of lots of information, and she explains it that when they did the research, the people that they most of the women in the research and the trials were 60 plus, so they were older women to start off with, and also the findings were not correct. And they said they didn't want to go to press, but it was too late, and all this information went out to press to say that HRT causes breast cancer. Now, the other side of that is that the hormones that they got were synthesized from horse urine, so from horse wee. So, and that's what they used to use, but they no longer use that, and they use body identical hormones now. So I'm on HRT, which uses body identical estrogen. Um, so it is safe, and it doesn't actually cause breast cancer. Now, it doesn't mean to say that you won't get breast, because there's lots of factors to give you breast cancer. But if you are eating a whole foods diet and having body identical HRT, you probably it won't cause you to get breast cancer. You've got a good chance of not getting it
So
as
I'll
anybody
read
else.
exactly what the NHS website says around breast cancer with HRT. So it says risks
Yeah,
of HRT. The benefits of HRT usually outweigh the risks for most women. The risks are usually very small and depend on the type of HRT you take, how long you take it, and your own health risks. And then it says
yeah,
breast cancer. There is little or no change in the risk of breast cancer if you take estrogen only HRT.
HRT.
Combined HRT can be associated with a small increase in the risk of breast cancer. The increased risk is related to how long you take HRT, and it falls after you stop taking it. Because of the risk of breast cancer, it's especially important to attend your breast screening appointments if you're taking HRT.
Yes,
So that's what
definitely.
the official
Yeah,
NHS website says. I'll put that
yeah,
in to the chat and we can add that
yeah.
into the show
That
notes
would
so
be
that
really
people
good.
know
Yeah,
what, but I think this is the thing is we, once there is a scare that goes out,
yeah,
right, then, or there's a study that goes out. I mean, here's the thing. When I studied economics, it was like, you can make the numbers work to whatever message you want to say. And I think we know this with with news. They can twist, and I mean, it was really interesting. I mean, this little side conversation, but I think it's very, very relevant to this conversation. I was on a phone call last night with some coaches, and we were talking about the economy, and we were talking about the recession, and what's going on. And I'm saying that not like it's not happening, but we're talking about the reality, the fact of this recession. And one of the coaches said to me, Joy, like, I think, and we were in a safe space where I was saying, look, we're dealing with a recession. How are you dealing with it? And anyway, this woman said something just absolutely brilliant to me. She said, Joy, I think you need to go back and do some work on your abundance consciousness. And I thought that was such a great phrase. And what she said was, there is abundance in everything. And she said, you might have an abundance of bills that are outpay, that are due. You might have an abundance of debt. You might have an abundance of failures. Like, there is an abundance. It's just, what are you looking at that abundance on? And I guess how this ties into this conversation is, you can spin the story of menopause any way you want to spin it, right? And if you try and listen to everything that's out there, and you find and you're looking for the evidence that it gives cancer, or you're looking for, and it's not to say that it's not valid and that we shouldn't be looking that. I mean, we should recognize, where are these studies coming from? When the COVID vaccine came out, I was really blessed to know and lucky to know one of the women who actually developed the vaccine, and Kath Green. And she wrote a book. Her daughter was in my son's class at school. She wrote a book called The Vaxxers, and she explained everything about the vaccine. And she took all the myths people were throwing out into the news, and she broke them down and really tried to educate people on why people are saying what they're saying, and what's actually happening, and why they were able to speed up the trials, et cetera, et cetera. So I think as people who are going through massive changes in life right now, we're still living in sort of a COVID world. We're still living in a tricky world with the recession and the economy. And, we're also living in a tricky world as women who are going through this menopause phase, often with teenagers, by the way, who are going through their own hormonal changes, that double whammy of hormone
Yeah,
hitting.
that's definitely the case.
So, you can listen to what's ever out there, and you can make decisions based on that, or you can take responsibility. And I think, responsibility is the ability to respond. I'm going to look at the information that's out there, and I'm going to own the decision as to what I'm going to do. But a lot of
Yeah,
people will hear a news report that says, HRT causes breast cancer, and then that's it. They're going to suffer for the next 20 years because they're not going to change anything about them because they're worried.
yeah,
When actually, if they did some digging and some research, they might come to a more educated decision for themselves. And I hope that what this podcast is doing, and we're doing a series on menopause, I hope it opens up the conversation, not to say, this is what I believe, or this is what Julia believes, but we're bringing together the different people who are in this space to talk about things, so that you're more educated, so you can take responsibility for what you want to do about menopause.
yeah.
But don't let a news article throw you off
No,
of your game. A news article is a piece of information. You have to go into your gut and say, is this right for me or not? And I think that's the message that we really want to get out here. Suzanne,
yeah,
Stephanie's
definitely.
also added that we need to check our breasts when we're in the shower and make
No,
sure we know our boobs.
that is so true. That
Absolutely.
is so true. And I think the best thing for people to do, Joy, you start off by having a conversation with your doctor. And if you want to talk about HRT, make an appointment and ask for a doctor that specialises in HRT and menopause to start off with. Then you're going to go in to have a conversation with the right person that's got all the information and the knowledge. And you can say, well, where do you get your information from? Ask those questions. Where do you get your information from? Where's the evidence? And one of the things that I have been taught when I'm looking for evidence, and I'm looking at research papers, you look. So the things that I do is look at the top, look at the abstract, what's it all about? Then I go to the bottom and I have a look who funded that research. If it's like McCain's, it won't probably, if they've got a vested interest. So if they produce mass-produced food, fast foods, or they've got a vested interest in the food chain, then I probably won't believe what they're saying, because that research will be swayed to have a favourable outcome for them, because they've paid for that research. So, it's knowing who did the research, knowing where it came from. So just ask those questions when you're talking to like the professionals, so your doctors.
I want to bring up this question because it's great, and it ties into what I just shared from the NHS. So on the NHS website, it says there's little or no change in the risk of breast cancer if you take estrogen only HRT. And then it
Yes.
talks about combined HRT. Andrea wants to know, what's body identical mean?
So body identical is actually estrogen that's synthesized from human tissue. So
So
it doesn't
that's
come from
the estrogen based
body
HRT.
identical. Yeah.
Body
So
identical estrogen based HRT.
yeah. So and then it depends. So if you haven't had any operations or anything, you've got your womb and everything, you also need progesterone and testosterone, would you believe? So that's what the combined HRT is. I don't know if I'm lucky or unlucky, but I don't have ovaries or a womb anymore, so I just have an estrogen only HRT. So, but go and talk to your doctor. They will give you all, because I'm not a medical expert. They will give you all that information, and they have all the science and all the research and access. And they, ask for the doctor that specialises in menopause and HRT, and don't suffer if you don't have to. If then you made that decision, like you say, you own that decision that you're not going to take it, that's fine. But there are other things you can do by balancing your nutrition, taking supplements. There are other things out there. But because the journey isn't like, it's not easy to find what works for you, which whatever it is, even if you take HRT, what dose you need, whether you need a patch, whether you need a gel, um, what works for you. You just have to, it's trial and error to find out what works for you, Meg, basically.
Andrea has a follow-up question. She says, thank you. Do they still use more urine to produce some forms of HRT? Mare urine or urine? Is that horse urine?
Yes. Yeah. So I think
I did not know we were going to be talking about horse urine on the podcast.
Yes. So your mother probably had HRT that was made out of horse wee. Yeah, let's put that up. So it's just like, why no? So I think a lot of it today is body identical, but make sure that that's what you ask your doctor for. Just say, is it body identical? Because I think they're coming around to that is what it is. But I don't, different countries are different as well. So make sure you ask, you want body identical HRT, because that is the best thing, because it's more similar to what your body's used to. And you can also do things like, if you eat lots of fresh leafy green vegetables, in lots of the vegetables, pulses and whole grains, they've got phytoestrogens in there, which can attach to all the receptors that normal estrogen does. So it's not a like for like replacement, but it can help so much. But you do have to eat it every day, because it does disappear. That sort of.
Okay, so let's talk about, so you said there's certain foods that attach and that are good for
Yeah.
replenishing estrogen. So Americans call it estrogen, and I think the
Estrogen.
Brits call it estrogen. So
Estrogen. It's the same thing. Yeah.
I'm sort of, it's like aluminium and aluminum. I'm sort of having to
That's the one. Yeah.
tomatoes, potatoes.
Potatoes.
So estrogen, estrogen. What are some of the vegetables, as you said? Give us a list of vegetables that are good for.
So if you want to just eat any sort of leafy green vegetables, they're really good. So a wide variety, and variety is the key. So you've got broccoli, kale, spinach, green beans, anything grown above the ground.
Okay, good. We have
Courgettes,
one of those in every single one of our dinners, and we rotate through
cauliflower.
all of those. Yes.
Yeah. And just mix in carrots and all the other bits as well. And not too many white potatoes. I don't eat white potatoes. Basically, when you get into menopause, those simple carbohydrates actually synthesize in your body to sugar really quickly, and they can spike your blood sugar. So that isn't good for you. And
So
sweet
what
potatoes
should
far
you replace
better.
white potatoes with?
I have sweet potato. Yeah, and I don't miss potatoes anymore. I did think,
And
oh, can't eat
I've
potatoes. What am I
never
going to
liked
do?
potatoes, but my husband loves
Oh,
them because he's
yeah,
British.
yeah. So, but you could just, I make sweet potato wedges um, now, occasionally, but quite often I don't even have potatoes. Or, and the
So, but
grains that
then
I'll
what do
have.
you replace the potatoes with if you're not doing sweet potatoes?
Um, Nothing. I just have vegetables. I just have a plate full of vegetables, lots of different vegetables, and even if I have a little bit of meat, um, so often I'll have that, but I don't eat meat every day. In fact, I don't
Well,
eat
and
meat
one thing I
every week.
noticed,
So
so
yeah,
you have an actual meal plan that people can
yes,
download for free, which is
yeah,
awesome. I've downloaded it. I made the cranberry cookies, which were
cookies,
made with almond. It
butter,
was almond butter and
yeah,
cranberries,
and
and
oats.
also
Is
what
it
else is in it?
oats? Oats?
Oats, yeah. So I made that. So you've got a meal plan that people can download for free, and they can
Yeah,
see what sort of a menopause adjusted diet is nutritionally. And it's got great suggestions in there. It's also themed for the autumn. There's
it
pumpkin
is.
in there. And I
You should,
noticed that for what you have done for people who don't necessarily eat meat, you've put in like a vanilla protein that they would put into their pumpkin shake, for
say,
example.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So the only thing about I try not to use protein powders because you have to look for a really good one. Um, but if you don't eat meat and you really don't eat oats or anything, because you can actually just put oats in instead of protein powder. And if you find any recipes that's got protein powder, you can swap it with oats, then swap it with oats because oats are full of protein.
So
Um,
if people want to find you on Instagram, they go to My Treasured Life Nutrition. And
yes,
then in your link in bio, there's the petition, which
yes,
I'll share as well into the chat for people who want to sign the petition. It's got 2,811 signatures. So I'm hoping that this podcast will
if we
help
get more.
increase the signatures on that petition.
Yeah,
At
definitely.
10,000 signatures, the government will respond to the petition. And this is the petition to help keep more women in the workplace for longer and improve their rights. And it would be that the government would add menopause to the Equalities Act 2010 as a protected characteristic and would require employers to make reasonable adjustments for menopausal women. I think this is a huge,
Yeah,
important petition that we should be doing.
definitely.
You also have your 5-day. I love what you call it. It's your real food, real quick
Real
menu
quick.
plan.
Yeah.
I love
It's
that.
just to
So
show people that, cooking from scratch is not, doesn't take forever. It doesn't have to take forever. No, my mum used to, yeah, has always cooked from scratch. So
so
it's just what I was used to.
I've put the link to the petition and I've put the link to your 5-day real food, real quick menu plan in the chat. It's also going to
Yeah.
go in the show notes. It'll also go out
Yeah.
in the email that we send to all of our podcast listeners. I have to say,
Good.
I did not know I was going to be talking about horse wee and all sorts of other things, but it was amazing to have this conversation and really open up this topic on a deeper level. I know, some of you are listening to this podcast going, well, I thought Sparkle and Thrive, the Tech Pixies podcast, was about social media. Social media is a small piece of what we do at Tech Pixies. It's what we started with
It
at
is.
Tech Pixies, but we do so much more. And we now have a thriving membership of women in this 40 to 60 age range who are leveraging social media, just like Julia is, in order to get her message out there around menopause and nutrition. But we also have life coaching programs. We have our vision workshop, and Julia's doing our Dream Builder program. So we've got
Wow.
lots of different ways that you can work with Tech Pixies. It really is about helping you to sparkle and thrive. It's helping you find those supportive, positive, authentic relationships with other women who are keen to learn and want to be empowered, and getting you in community with them so you can move forward. And Julia is a really great example of that. And I'm so glad that you're in our community. And I'm so thankful that you have been doing all this work to get to the place where you've got your voice and you're using social media to get that voice out there, and you're changing women's lives, especially those with menopause, through nutrition. So Julia, you are a shining light in our community, and I want to say thank you so much for being here today. And I know so many people here are loving this podcast, and have been saying so while they're watching live. So I really, really appreciate that. There's one final question before we go, and then we'll wrap this baby up. And that's from Tanya. And she says, what reasonable adjustments could an employer make that would help with brain fog and mood swings?
So I think the main things on there, one of the things that I find is supporting them with information. So, finding somebody like me, a nutrition coach, that will come in and run courses and show the women in their employment, what they should be eating, how they should be eating, when they should be eating. Also making sure the lighting and natural light is available in the workplace. So that's one of my biggest things, because I work in a windowless warehouse. So I have to move my office into the front of the building where there's windows, and I have to spend a certain amount of day there. Otherwise, I get fatigued. So that will improve your energy as well. So there's lots and lots and lots of information out there in the world. I think the employers just need to go and find it, bring it into the workplace, and support their own employees, and understand that they might have to adjust their working hours, adjust how they work. My employer is fabulous, bought me a standing sitting desk because so I can stand and not sit down and do nothing, so I can be moving when I'm working. That really helped me. So there's so finding the right information and just being aware and educating themselves on what the menopause is all about and how people can find help, and providing their employees with, all that information at a minimum. But it would be ideal if they would provide some training as well and some
So actually,
support.
if you are listening to this podcast and you have staff and you want to help them adjust the work, and you want to help your workplace adjust to women in your office who are going through menopause, then you need to be speaking with Julia, because she's doing these workshops in corporate environments, in business environments, to help level up the education across the board for the companies that are employing women of this age. So great.
Definitely.
So great. Okay. Stephanie says, great answer, Julia. Employers can do lots to help. They just need to be told what they can do. And I think that's half the
I think
battle.
that's
They
true.
don't have this knowledge either. And
So,
we went back to that conversation of responsibility. If we have the knowledge is power, and we can act on that, we can create an environment which is an environment that women can thrive in, then we're moving forwards.
yeah,
Oh,
definitely.
brilliant. Well, thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Julia.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you for having me on. It's been amazing. It's been my pleasure.
Likewise. Thanks everybody for watching live, and those of you who are listening to it on replay. I hope you enjoy our menopause series. We've got at least 3 podcasts in the pipeline. We may have a few more depending on how popular the topic is. I've loved these conversations. So do let us know by emailing support@techpixies.com if you've enjoyed this podcast and you'd like to see more of them, or if you have other ideas for the podcast that you'd like to see us put out there. It's really about helping women in this age range, 40s to 60s, some maybe in their 30s, some maybe in their 70s, move forward and thrive in their life. And that's what matters to me, and it matters to Julia, and it matters to all of our listeners as well. Have a great day, everybody.